Wish I could say I was finally over you, but that's not the truth. Everyone always keep falling in love again. The fuck's wrong with them? I don't understand.
Before we get into the DIY, let me show you guys some of the cute t-shirts that I recently got from Jiffy shirts. Got a bunch of them in like pastel blue, light and dark green, maroon, and some tie-dye t-shirts that I am absolutely in love with. I mean, I wanted to challenge myself to see what I can turn these t-shirts into, but as soon as I tried this vibrant tie-dye t-shirt on, I said to myself, there's no way I'm cutting this up, definitely adding it to my streetwear collection. Anyways, moving on to the rest, these are what I came up with, and I am so proud of this whole transformation video. As always, I try my best to keep my DIYs very easy and to the point, so let's get into the video. For the first outfit, I'm going to transform this blue spiral tie-dye t-shirt, for which I'm marking 14 inches from the neckline first, which is going to be the length of the top, and then I'm drawing a straight line from one armhole bottom to the other, as that's the best way to find out if your line is straight and it's not crooked. Once I'm sure about the length, I'm using this old dress for tracing, so I'm placing it together, matching the necklines first. Also placing the sleeves so I can trace the armhole along with the bodice nicely, and going to cut it out. Now for the length of the sleeves, I'm marking 6 inches, as that's how long I want my sleeves to be. And then I'm placing the armhole of the dress near the mark and tracing out the rest. And also don't forget to add some seam allowance. And once I'm tracing, I'm cutting out the sleeve and also used it to trace the other sleeve as well. Now that I have the sleeves cut out, I'm placing all the pieces together, like the two sleeves and the bodies. Next, I'm pinning the sleeves together to the bodies, and I'm starting from the middle. That way you can cut off any excess of the armhole in case the length doesn't end up matching. Next, I'm going to sew the sleeves together using straight stitch. Now because this shirt is made of 100% cotton, so I am using a straight stitch here. But if you are using polyester or any kind of stretch fabric, it's always safe to go with a zigzag stitch. Next, fold the entire piece in half and sew the side edges using straight or zigzag stitch. Also, don't forget to hem the bottom raw edges. Now moving on to the rest of the t-shirt, I'm again using my old dress for tracing and matching the bottom edges together, tracing it out, adding seam allowance. Next, I'm going to use the side pieces for creating the waistline of the skirt. So basically, I'm just trimming off the excess length first, and then also trimming off any uneven edges to make sure it's a long, straight rectangle piece, and also cutting out the piece in half so I have two pieces for the skirt, both front and the back. Next, I'm going to use some elastic band. The link will be down below in the description box. And I'm going to take few inches lesser than my actual waist measurement, that is about 24 inches, and cutting it in half. Next, I'm placing the elastic on each band and folding the bands in half, sandwiching the elastic bands and pinning the corners. Next, going to sew the corner edges first using straight stitch, and also seal the bottom edges using zigzag stitch. Once the waistbands are ready, I'm pinning it one by one to the skirt bit, matching the top edges together. Make sure both the pieces are wrong side up, and sew it using zigzag stitch. Now once both the skirt pieces are ready, I'm placing them together both wrong side up and going to sew the side edges using straight stitch. Now after both the top and the skirts ready, I cut out 2 rectangle pieces to add on the sides of my top, which is about 3 inches wide. And first you need to hem the rectangle pieces all around the edges. And then place it near the seam line and do 3 straight stitches, which will create the casing for some straps. Did the same thing for the skirt, creating the casing on the side, sewing it using straight stitch. Lastly, I made 4 long straps, 2 for the top and 2 for the skirt, and added a safety pin on one strap near the edge. And then I'm passing the straps with the help of the safety pin from one side of the tunnel to the other. That way the straps will be on both the casings and the excess hanging out. And I did the same exact thing to all the 4 straps, and this is what it looks like. I am so happy with the final result. Like, it looks so cute, but I think if the short was 2 sizes larger, it would have been perfect for the ruched effect. But still, I am not mad. I'm really happy how this turned out. Came out to be the perfect set for summer.
Was expecting. I don't see the pros, don't know the cons, forget the whys. Do you know why?
The next one is super easy, and also because it's very similar to the first DIY. So I'm placing my old dress over the t-shirt and pinning it down so it won't move around while I start cutting. And here I'm going to keep 2 inches extra for seam allowance on both the sides, as the t-shirt is not very stretchy but my dress is, so to make sure it hugs my body really well. So I'm tracing the pattern on both the sides and then going to cut it out. Now moving on, I'm matching both the sleeves of the t-shirt together and placing my dress sleeves over the other sleeves, matching the edges together again, and tracing out the pattern with the help of my chalk and going to cut it out. I'm so sorry, it's so light you cannot actually see the mark, but basically I'm just tracing it out. Anyways, moving on, I unfolded the bodice, laying flat the wrong side out and placing the sleeves on the sides all wrong side up and adding pins matching the edges together. Next, going to sew the sleeves using straight stitch. Next, going to sew the sleeves and the bodice together using straight stitch. Once the sleeves are added to the bodice, I'm going to sew the side edges from the sleeves area to the bottom on both the sides using zigzag stitch. Moving on to the leftover fabric, I'm cutting out 2 long pieces right beside where the dress was cut out. That way I know these pieces are going to have the perfect length matching the dress from the armhole to the bottom. Now because there were 2 layers of fabric on each, so I joined the pieces sewing one side edges on both, and this is what it looks like. So next, it's time to add the pieces to the dress. So I'm placing both the dress and one of the piece, both of them wrong sides kissing, and doing a straight stitch first in the middle, matching the seam line one over another, as this way it turns out to be perfect, super easy. Then I'm sewing the sides using straight stitch. Now this time I didn't hem the raw edges of the casing at the first place. So here I'm folding the raw edges first and then doing a straight stitch. Lastly, I also created 2 long straps and added to the dress exactly like I did with the first DIY set. And there we have our handmade ruched dress ready. So simple and easy, yet looks stunning. So I think we all need this in our closet. It's definitely a must-have.
You brought out the best in me. We had everything we needed. You put me aside and turn out the lights for no reason.
The next DIY is my absolute favorite, for which I'm going to use this dark bottle green t-shirt, using my old dress for tracing the pattern out. But before doing that, I added 2 pins on the side of the dress, which is going to be the length of the dress from underneath the bust area to the bottom. Next, cutting out the pattern, keeping about an inch on both the sides for seam allowance. Also marking near the pin areas on both the sides of the t-shirt so I can connect both the marks to draw a straight line and then trimming off the excess. Next, I'm placing one of the leftover piece horizontally, which I'm going to use it for the top. First, I'm trimming off any excess starting from the armhole area and also trimming off the hemline at the bottom because we don't need that. And also any unwanted edges to make sure it's 2 even rectangle pieces. FYI, the pieces are 7 inches wide and 19 inches long. Moving on, I sewed both the pieces together on one edge to make sure it's one long piece and also hemmed the top edges. Next, I'm folding the piece in half again and I'm cutting out a very slight carved U, which is about 4.5 inches long from the top in case you're wondering. And I also hemmed it using straight stitch. Next, I made a strap about 11 inches long and pinning one edge to the corner of the top and the other strap edge to the other corner. Dividing the strap in half and pinning it to the middle of the top. This way I know the fabric is equally distributed throughout the strap. Repeating the same step over and over again. So I'm dividing the strap and the fabric in every small section and pinning it down. Next, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sew throughout the strap along with the gatherings. So basically, I'm creating small gatherings at one place, sewing a little, and doing the same thing over and over again until I reach the other side of the edge. Now, in case this whole thing feels like a little too much work for you, you can replace the strap with an elastic band. That way, you will only have to stretch the elastic while stitching it with the fabric. Next, I made 2 long straps about 15 inches long and I'm going to add it to the corner edges of the top. So I'm just sewing it in a box around the edges to make sure it's nice and secure. So this is what the top looks like once it's done. I also used the widest straight stitch I have in my sewing machine. I did a top stitch at the bottom of the top, leaving the thread edges hanging on both the sides. So the loose stitch allows you to gather your fabric just the way you like. Just make sure you are very gentle while pulling the thread to make sure it doesn't break. And once I was done gathering the bottom, this is what it looks like. Moving on to the back, I also cut out another 2 pieces for the back of the top, which is about 17 inches long at the top, 15 inches at the bottom, and 4 inches wide. Also made another 2 straps about 17 inches long, sandwiching it between the pieces like both 4 inches away from the edges and adding some pins before I go ahead and stitch them. Don't get mad, I skipped a few steps here because listen, I didn't want the video to be 30 minutes long, and also they are the things I've already done so many times in my previous videos. So in case if you want to watch it, just click the link on your right side. Now moving on, I'm placing the front top and one of the bodies bit both wrong side out, adding pins together near the edges and going to sew it using a zigzag stitch. And did the same exact thing for the back piece. Place the bodies and the top together both wrong side out, pin it near the edges and sewing it using a straight stitch. Lastly, place both the back and the front piece together, both wrong side out, and seal the side edges using a zigzag stitch. Honestly, the main part of making this dress is creating the gatherings for the bust area. So in case you've got that part, the rest should be very easy and quick for you.
Triggered inside this situation. Wonder if we maybe were mistaken. Don't wanna talk, don't wanna see, don't wanna feel it. What is left?
Okay, so I saved the quickest and the easiest transformation for the last. So for which I'm going to use this coffee brown t-shirt, and I'm first trimming off the sleeves from the t-shirt, just following the seam lines and cutting it out. Now you don't want to throw up the sleeves because we are going to need them, so you better save it up. Next, drawing a straight line right behind the neckline and cutting it out. Place my old dress again as always and going to trace the pattern out, keeping about an inch on both the sides and then cutting it out. Moving on, sew the side edges together from top to bottom with the pieces wrong side out using a zigzag stitch. Also, do not forget to hem the top raw edges. Now moving on to the sleeves that we saved from the t-shirt, I'm cutting out both of them in half. Next, I laid the pieces flat, both unfolded, and this is the pattern of the sleeves that we are going to use today. You don't have to worry, I'll leave the link down below in the description box. Also, I'm so sorry I turned my autofocus mode on by mistake and it sucks. Please bear with me. Okay, moving on, I cut out 2 medium-sized elastic bands, both about 16 inches long. And before adding the elastics, first make sure you hem the bottom edges of the sleeves using a zigzag stitch. Next, I'm going to pin the elastics to the sleeves all around apart from the bottom part. First, I'm pinning both the raw edges to the corners and then divided the elastic in half and pinned it to the sleeves. I'm going to sew the elastic and the sleeve all around the top edges. So all you need to do is sew as you would normally do. Just the difference is that here, try to sew little by little and stretch the elastic every time you stitch. That way it will create some gatherings in the fabric when the elastic is released. And once you reach the other corner, make sure to trim off the excess of the elastic if you have any. Next, I'm going to hem the raw edges along with the elastic. So just fold the fabric once and sew it as usual, but don't forget to stretch both your fabric and the elastic while sewing. And moving on, I'm marking 3.5 inches over the dress from the sides where I'm going to add the sleeves. So all I'm doing is pinning the corner edges of the sleeves to the bodies with both the pieces wrong side out. Going to sew them together, and to make sure they are nicely secure, I like to go back and forth a few times using straight stitch. And there we have our last transformation. As I said, it's really easy and quick. Hardly took me about an hour to make this dress, although I would have liked the sleeves to be a little more puffier. But overall, I think it's cute. Let me know in the comment section below which one was your favorite, and also don't forget to give this video a thumbs up as it inspires me to make more videos for you guys, as I always say. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.
Triggered inside this situation.